Welcome to episode 42 of the Hipsters United podcast. My name is Chris, and joining me this week are Jason.
Hello.
Jill.
Hello.
And Andrew.
Hello.
It has been altogether too long since our last podcast, but finally things have settled down enough where we could all get together and talk about the pumpkins. And just in time, as we had some breaking news from the studio this week that we'll talk about in just a bit. But first, in our last episode, which was a few weeks ago, Jason and I talked about Machina II and gave our, at times, harsh opinions on the album. And judging from the comments we got, many of our listeners disagreed with our assessment. So I wanted to give the other panelists a chance to chime in with their opinions. Jill and Andrew, do you guys side more with us or with the listeners in your own take on the free album?
I'm jumping on the bandwagon. I've never been a huge fan of Machina II. I think in pieces there are some great snippets of Smashing Pumpkins' work on there, but I've never been a huge fan of that album, so I don't have a lot of commentary to make besides what you guys did already. So
yeah, I'm gonna have a unanimous opinion that definitely not their best work. I like some of the songs are I like, but fortunately, I think the sound, the recorded in the middle or down in a weirdly echoey bowl sort of sound that the record has in certain parts of it, especially the really heavy bassy stuff, really does not to my ear in terms of things, the kind of stuff that I like. But there are a couple of songs on there that are good. I always, from like the first time I heard it, I always liked Vanity and Here's the Atom Bomb. It was nice to get a full version of that. I'll give you that much. But otherwise, it was. I'm going to join the podcast crew and giving it a general thumbs down.
Chris, it was interesting. In the time since we did the Machina II podcast, I actually heard from an unnamed source that I may get in trouble for saying this, but I shouldn't. I think it's fair enough. I heard that one of the most common things the band hears from fans about what something they should do is release Machina II. And I should reiterate something we talked about on the podcast again, just now that I feel kind of confirmed in this opinion that we were kind of throwing out there. It seems really pervasive that people have this belief that the band could put out the album on CD and it would sound a lot better. Yeah. When you and I were to say on the podcast, what we have is what it sounds like. That's really it. I mean, you go listen to Real Love on Rotten Apples, right? The Greatest Hits album. It doesn't sound that different.
No.
Real Love is Real Love. I mean, what we have is what we're going to get. And, it's just kind of bizarre to be asking for a free album that's already been released to be released. And so you get to pay $15 for the same thing. It seems kind of weird.
Yeah, that always struck me as kind of strange. Yeah, we got it for free. I'd really like to pay you something for it, though. Could you please release it again, but make us pay for it this time?
And they didn't, another thing that's happened since the podcast is there's been this sort of mini controversy on the music blogosphere about comments by Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth criticizing Radiohead's release of In Rainbows, saying it was a neat marketing ploy, but she was pointing out that Radiohead really ended up putting out In Rainbows via conventional channels. And if you really look factually at what Radiohead did, you strip away the hype and you strip away being an insane Radiohead fan. They put out MP3s of the album in 192 kilobits per second, and then they would let you pay for it if you wanted to, not telling you that they were going to put it out eventually on CD. And then when they did put it out on CD, they took away the free download. You can't get it for free anymore. So what's so weird to me is that Radiohead got all this credit for doing this when the Pumpkins put out full quality, or they put out the vinyl, right, of the album, let people encode it at whatever quality they wanted, including FLAC or, the highest quality MP3s you could get, circulate it for free, and have never put it out, never tried to sell it, never tried to make a dime off it. And people are still poo-pooing that, that was a B-sides album, they weren't going to be able to sell any, blah, blah, blah. And, you and I were estimating they could have sold 250,000 maybe, So, I don't know. Once again, no surprise, Pumpkins fan, yes. I'm sticking up for the Pumpkins, but it was interesting that this whole In Rainbows thing cropped up so forcefully in the last month.
Yeah, that is kind of funny. But sorry, listeners, I gave everyone a chance, and it seems like everyone is on Jason and my side. At least everyone who has a voice here.
So here's the question: are we representative of a silent majority, or are we totally crazy?
Well, people, as I think we've mentioned before, people who comment on blogs generally don't comment to agree. They comment to give the opposite opinion. So
yeah, that's right. It's a good point. If you say yes, all your commenters are going to say no. It's no, right? Nobody's going to comment and say yes, yes. I mean, that does happen, but
well, reason is found. Yes, yeah,
like rare.
Very rare.
I think your earlier point, though, Jason, was interesting in thinking about my own reaction to Machina II. If I would have paid for it, would I feel differently about it? Would I feel it was more... I hate to rely on hipster runoff for terrible linguistics to describe this, but would I have felt it was more relevant or,
meaningful?
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting.
Music means a lot when music is bought, right? And
I think that the whole album is somewhat tainted in its chronology as well, in terms of like when it was released versus how I was feeling about the band at that time. Like, my favorite band is being stripped away from me. I'm an angsty college freshman. Or something. I don't know.
Yeah. One thing that would suggest maybe we are actually... Maybe the position we hold is more commonly held than it might appear. I mean, if people are wanting them to put out the album believing it's going to sound better, clearly there's some dissatisfaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe there are a lot of people who don't think it's any good. I don't know.
I've been really happy that they've reiterated some of the songs in the live version, in a live setting, for sure. Some of the remakes of the songs themselves have been great. I love Home.
Yeah, I remember writing last year about how I liked they slowed down the tempo of Home when they played it live, and I thought it did wonders for the song.
And obviously they've loved playing Lucky 13 over and over and over the last couple of tours.
I wish we had a good recording of Lucky 13 with that weird extra 3-minute ending that they had in the late 2007 U.S. tour. No one knows what I'm talking about.
I do.
Well, the big news this week was that SmashingPumpkins.com finally confirmed that the drummer described by Billy as the drummer of the future in his blog post 2 weeks ago is indeed, as was broken on Hipsters United, Mike Byrne, who had previously worked with Billy in the studio for a week after the initial round of tryouts. And for fans who've been wondering who Billy would call on to replace Jimmy Chamberlain, this was pretty big news, but I don't know, I'm wondering if perhaps we, both as fans and as part of the quote-unquote music blogosphere, have made this into a bigger deal than it really is. I mean, yeah, Billy called Mike his drummer of the future, but he also said in a blog post on April 9th that he may need more than one drummer for what his plans are. And at one point in that blog post, he expressed his occasional desire to use a different drummer for every song, in fact. And he's already been working with a number of percussionists in the studio. So I'm wondering if it's possible that rather than becoming the Smashing Pumpkins drummer, all in capital letters, Mike will simply be one of many collaborators appearing on the next album. And Jason, what do you think?
Before I answer that, just because I know this is probably sticking in the craw of some of our listeners, that you credit us with breaking the story. And I want to say that is probably truer than people may want to say, but because it's true that someone on the SmashingPumpkins.com message board found the news that, found the hints that Mike was the quote-unquote drummer of the future person, right? But if we can scroll our attention back a few weeks, we clearly found and broke the story about him passing the first round of the audition, which is the reason people were even looking at the kid's MySpace in the first place. So, just wanted to mention that for everyone who's thinking they didn't really break it. We really did. All right. So then, your question is are we making a bigger story of it than it really is?
Is he the heir apparent to Jimmy, or is he just going to be another collaborator?
I think we don't know the answer to that question yet. So I somewhat agree with you. I think probably are making a little bigger story out of it than need to, especially considering if he was 20, would the story have been that big? There's something about teen at the end of that. 19, he's probably turning 20 in like 2 weeks or something, He just made the meme sphere, or the memosphere, when if he had been 20, people probably would have been like, okay, he's young, but, whatever. 19, though, oh my gosh. I don't know. I mean, Billy changes his mind all the time. I mean, yes, it's true he was looking for multiple drummers, and now he's got a drummer of the future, and, maybe he's excited by the thought of bringing this kid along,
Obviously, he's made a good enough impression if Billy's referring to him as the drummer of the future.
That's right. He thinks he has found his drummer of the future. Well, Chris, you're asking the question. You clearly think we're making too big a deal out of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that there may be a reason why there wasn't a big grand official announcement that this was happening. If it wasn't broken by Hipsters United, nothing would have been said about it at all, besides, I think I might have found my drummer of the future. I don't really consider that like a big, huge, I've found my replacement to Jimmy, I found the newest Smashing Pumpkin. I mean, in general, Billy's been stressing in his blog posts lately the fact that, while he's been in the studio working 100% on new Pumpkins material, he only occasionally sees his various recent bandmates. Ginger's pregnant, Jeff's playing with the Lassie Foundation, and you really get the sense that rather than full-time band members, his various friends and collaborators are just kind of folks lending Billy a hand while he creates his art. It's true that drums are the only instrument that Billy can't play as easily himself, so it kind of makes sense for him to have a full-time drummer once the arranging and recording process begins, but I don't know, I think this clearly is Billy's show and everyone else is just a collaborator. Not that this is necessarily a bad thing, it just seems that that's what the dynamic is right now.
Listening to you give that answer, though, I start to think it is a big deal. And here's why. The stuff he's been working on has been quieter stuff. Nobody's heard it, but come on. He's playing piano. He's coming off the mega rock era of Zeitgeist. The next album is going to be quieter. It's going to be piano-driven by all indications. It may not end up that way, but right now everything points in that direction. And so you don't need, pummeling kick-ass drums or whatever, right? Adore was largely done with the drum machine. So sure, it's call in Kerry Brown or Dax Nielsen or whoever and, play some perfectly competent drums, right? But think about when Billy's pendulum swings back toward rock again. And that's, without Jimmy, that's basically uncharted territory, right? Billy has basically never rocked without Jimmy, never even tried to, right? So in Billy's entire experience of Billy trying to rock, Jimmy has been there. All that stuff comes out of the two of them jamming in the studio in real time, right? Where did they develop all those Mellon Collie songs, Pasticcio Medley, all that? They're just doing that. They're playing together live in the studio, right? If Billy's got one eye on the future, right, the drummer of the future, and the future involves, rocking again at some point, he's going to need somebody along with him all the time, I think. So maybe it's a bigger deal than we think. And that, it's a bigger deal than having a bass player or having another guitarist, because all you need to do is, drums and guitar is, that's enough to have the backbone of the song, right? Anyway, there's an alternative take.
Yeah, I just kind of wonder if he'll still be around when Billy's pendulum swings back to rock. As far as we know, what he's doing right now, what did he call it? Pumpkin Summer Camp or something like that.
Right, I think, yeah.
And I think to Jason's earlier point, I get the feeling that, through the recent acquisition of these other band members like Ginger and Jeff and Lisa and, the other various people that have been on tour with them, it seems like Billy has really been interested in bringing along sort of a young and vibrant energy on tour. And, I would imagine that, and we've seen, it was in If All Goes Wrong, wasn't it? Was it in If All Goes Wrong that Lisa talked about sort of her audition for the band and how it was mostly the level of energy that they kind of connected on? Am I remembering that incorrectly? Either way,
I just remember saying it was a really fun audition on If All Goes Wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I would imagine that Billy is looking for technical chops, sure, but really a solid energy to bring to the band that will mesh well with their touring schedule, will be, bring along some excitement and some youth, some vivaciousness. Yeah. Because it's really hard for him to find, I would imagine it's hard for him to find a drummer that is as all in as Jimmy was with the experience that Jimmy has.
I couldn't agree more, Jill. I mean, everything you just said, I think is dead on. And, it's going to be, people were complaining like, oh, he doesn't have the chops, or, they're looking back at this interview. We were talking about this interview in the comments on one of the posts on hipstersunited.com. It was an interview of not too long ago, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, and Billy was saying, about his relationship with Jimmy, that, if he started describing some thing about like some 60s band, but then done with another band's sound and in some other way, if he started saying that to Jimmy, Jimmy would know exactly what it was. Mm-hmm. Right? And that was very important, and he couldn't imagine, having that with another drummer or trying to work with another drummer who didn't have that, And people were pointing to this, saying, that just... I mean, I don't know what they're pointing to it saying. If Jimmy's gone, Jimmy's gone, right? What do? Cry and go home? I mean, that's just not going to happen, right? So, I think you're going to be looking for a replacement who... And it's not just purely going to be about chops. I mean, what does that even mean, Not everyone's chops are the same, And technical ability to play something is important, but once a kind of a minimum level of competence is reached, then above that it's got to be about some sort of like connection, Mm-hmm. And I figure Billy's found it with this kid. I mean, I think that's got to be obvious,
Well, and I think that there's, it's easier to mold someone's style. And I think of any impression that I sort of fundamentally get from Billy Corgan is that he's willing to, help mold another musician's style if he wants to use them as a tool for conveying his music.
Yeah, in that way, I mean, having not very much experience, I mean, it can be seen as positive. I mean, right. As long as the guy knows how to play the drums, it could be a good thing that he has the technical proficiency, but not the experience in the industry and the years of having honed a specific style that now Billy has to say, well, that's not really what I'm looking for. Maybe he was looking for someone who he could just kind of mold in whatever image he was trying to go for with the current batch of songs that he's working on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's a lot easier to learn something than to unlearn and then relearn something else when you're dealing with elements of style. So
Yeah. Let me give an example, right? And this isn't going to be a drummer example because I can't think of a good one off the top of my head. But let's go back to the guitar auditions, right? You're like, quote unquote, trying to replace James Iha or Matt Sweeney or whatever, right? You're trying to find your new other guitarist, right? And, you got Jeff Schroeder and you've got Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, right? And, you're looking at Tom Morello and he's doing all this crazy stuff and you're like, wow, that guy's a great guitarist. And then you imagine, putting him in the band and it's like, is Tom Morello going to change? No, he's going to be Tom Morello, jacking around with the switch on his guitar and making that, Rage Against the Machine DJ / rock riff sound that he does, and it's amazing or whatever, right? But I mean, come on, that guy's not going to be a guitarist with Smashing Pumpkins. I don't care how good he is, and I don't care if he's better, he's got more chops than Jeff Schroeder. I mean, that's not. I don't know. All I'm saying is style matters, which is a retarded point. I'm sorry, I just wasted 60 seconds of everyone's lives, but. The guy from System of a Down, Down. I know about System of a Down.
Sewed.
They're not Sopdy. Yeah, I mean, bring that guy in. I don't know anything about him personally, but he probably drums like System of a Down sounds, and that may just not work. I don't know.
Especially if you're right in thinking that Billy's going for a softer piano-driven sound. I don't know how bringing in the System of a Down drummer, how that helps out that sound.
Well,
Now take everything you've done in the past and don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Here's a triangle. Play the triangle.
I think what we have heard of this guy, which is what is posted on his MySpace. There's not a whole lot there to really put a resume on in terms of I'm a rock drummer. There's some, I guess you call it competent drum work there, but obviously he's got competent. But obviously Billy saw something in this guy that he's more than just competent. He's got either an attitude or they just hit it off sort of on a personal level. Whatever happened, maybe we'll find out eventually what the magic was that told Billy that this was the way to go. But
Billy has this bizarre vision that he's going to shape this kid and mold him and blah blah blah, and then it's all going to not happen.
Yeah, he's found his the son he never had.
God.
A rock son.
Everyone thought it was the guy from My Chemical Romance.
It's like, Jesus Christ, super drummer. This is my one and only son that I have begotten for your rock gods.
A Song for a Son was really about Mike Byrne. We just never knew it until now.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a good thing that Rolling Stone doesn't listen to our podcasts.
We're on their radar now, though. Maybe they will.
This is the second time Rolling Stone is linked to us. Oh yeah, 2-time Rolling Stone linked blog.
Is it bad that when there's big news like this that I get kind of more excited that we get picked up by 30 huge publications than the actual content of the news itself? Is that sort of a bizarre, double-edged sword?
You start Googling Hipsters United instead of smashing.
Exactly. I'm like, whoa! I just got a link from NME and MTV and VH1 and Hipsters United. What?
I gotta say, it was pretty cool to be credited nicely by Gil Kaufman. I think that was really cool because he's awesome. So that made me happy. He respected our work.
Although, and there was relatively little, lashing back at us besides Buddyhead. Even Pitchfork treated us pretty. I think pretty well.
Of our blog, which they would never bother to do. I mean, let's face it.
True.
They're pretty much above that and beyond that at this point. They're beyond even going to concerts to review them. They just start talking about what they think they sound like or quoting the people who have been.
It's true. It's true. What was it? I'm trying to remember what exactly Buddy had said about us. But I think it was more of a riff on our name than anything.
He didn't know anything about anything.
Well, speaking of the coverage of this whole thing, I mean, I said that the big news this week was that Billy's working with a drummer, but really the big news is that the drummer is 19 years old. I mean, clearly that's the big headline, and it really should be 19-year-old, all in caps, and then drummer in lowercase letters, at least based on the headlines that I've seen. And I mean, at first I was a little bit irritated that everybody was focusing on his age, but I don't know. He isn't an industry veteran. He's a virtual unknown, and that's really all anyone has to go on. I mean, what else do people know about him besides his age? So I've come to accept that that's going to be the story until some sort of music comes out, and we get to hear what he sounds like and what he brings to the table.
He's younger than us.
Although, is there really going to be news that comes out? It'll be like, New Smashing Pumpkins drummer, competent, interesting, or something like that.
I saw a couple places mock the name of his old band.
Moses Smell the Roses?
Yeah. Seriously, that's what they're called. Oh my god. Yeah, it was like Pitchfork or something. I'm pretty sure it was them, actually.
Weak.
I just couldn't believe that. I'm like, and Grizzly Bear is such a brilliant name for a band. Let's call our band Rainbow Trout. Oh my gosh, that's genius. Oh yeah, wasn't it also Pitchfork who, when Wilco came out with the title of their new album, and the title was Wilco, the album, and they tweeted, "How great is that?" And I tweeted back at them, like, the next week, the title for the new Flaming Lips album was announced, and I forget what it is. But I tweeted at Pitchfork, "New Flaming Lips record is called blah. How great is it?" Seriously, I don't know. Will you tell me how great it is?
Tell me how to think it is. Yes.
I want to know
Will you tell me what I should think, please? Please?
Moses, smell the roses. Stupid.
That's what happens when you're 19 years old.
Oh, my
You can't
God.
even think of a good band name.
I know,
The
like
Mark.
Smashing Pumpkins. You know,
What kind of
much better.
name is that? The Mark.
You got a birthmark? I got one too. We're the marked.
There is a good reason why they don't listen to our podcast.
Clearly, the time off hasn't been good for us.
No,
We're
Swan with a
in
Z.
our A game. Swan with a Z. Swans. It's like the Swanson, man.
No, singular. Not the Swans.
So is there anything else to say about young Mike Byrne? Or are we just waiting until October when the first song or batch of songs gets released?
I guess we could say one more thing. I could say one more thing. Probably the most common, like, commentary, I think, on it, beyond his age, was, "Good luck, kid, you'll need it. Work with Billy Corgan. Oh my gosh, he's gonna, like, destroy your whatever," you know? I don't know what to say about that. I think it's funny. You know, Jeff Schroeder, he's obviously destroyed Jeff Schroeder.
Yeah, he's a shell of his former self.
That's right. Jeff is so unhappy working with Billy and having gone on all these tours and just miserable.
Ginger too.
They're miserable.
Ginger too. Yeah, she's like gotten married, gonna have a baby.
That's right.
She's really happy in Los
every time you
Angeles.
see Jeff in those pictures when he's in the studio jamming with Billy, always a big, like, "Why am I here? This is so such a bummer, dude." You know. So, you know, welcome to the club, Mike Byrne. I'm sure it's gonna be horrible. No, I loved the Rolling Stones slip though on that he's having he's having the summer break ever. Exactly. They left out the adjective. I thought that was so fun.
Maybe they were still deciding.
That's right.
It remains to be seen.
Actually, I wonder if it's
Fill in
because
later.
didn't VH1 just cancel Best Week Ever?
Oh no, they have? Oh
I
God.
think they did,
Oh,
but maybe they were so torn up.
Clearly,
Yeah,
it's deeply affected Andrew.
Yeah.
We may need to give you the rest of the podcast off. So
Andrew's
that you can
flipping through
recover.
his channels on mute right now. What?
No.
Yep, the last Best Week Ever with Paul F. Tompkins of 2009 aired on the 12th at 11 p.m. this past week.
I think we better move on, Chris.
It's getting a little emotional around here. Well, before we sign off, I wanted to talk a little bit about an article on SmashingPumpkins.com this week in which Simon interviewed Frank Olinsky, the art director for Mellon Collie and the Infinite Sadness, about his role in the packaging for the Epic album. And I think what struck me the most was not only how involved Billy was in the artwork, but how closely the final product mirrored Billy's original idea sketches. Jill, what did you think? Did you get a chance to read the article?
I actually don't have much to comment about on this right now because I haven't gotten a chance to read the article. It's been
Okay.
this week. So.
It did just come out Friday, I think, so...
Yeah, I've heard really great things about it, and it's on my to-do list.
What about either of you, Andrew or Jason?
You're surprised that Billy Corgan's artistic direction was followed? I don't understand. I really don't.
I'm surprised that it was so verbatim, though. Verbatim is a bad use of the word, since verbatim is words and this is images. But, I mean, the sketches, they're like stick figure sketches, but when you put them side by side, it's like exactly what got done.
Yeah, you mean how much detail he provided about some of the things?
Yeah.
I think in one of them, though, I mean, who knows what he ended up saying to the guy. Of course, the sketch is just a sketch, but didn't he say something about children playing baseball, and then it ended up rabbits playing baseball?
Well, it said children, and then he said, or, like, something even crazier, maybe, like, animals playing baseball.
Oh.
And it did end up being rabbits.
Chris looked at the sketches a little bit closely than I did.
Yeah, I had the same sort of thought as Chris, that I wrote up our summary on hipstersnoted.com of this article, and on our little summary, I just included the first, the cover picture of Mellon Collie, but there's a whole bunch. There's about 6 other examples of the stick drawings, and then the final product next to it. And except for the fact that rabbits ended up playing baseball instead of kids, obviously it was Billy's idea, but the Olinsky and the illustrator he found, Olinsky, decided to give the job to do the sketches. John Craig. That kind of interesting. I've never really seen the process of creating album art before, and it's probably not surprising that Billy is, as he always is, and very, very closely involved in the design. But it was very neat to see the sort of first hand how it all happened, and it's always fun. It's always fun to squint at Billy's handwriting.
You know how great work is done, though. Usually, just throwing up your hands and saying, "Hey, man, whatever."
Yeah, just come back in a couple weeks.
That's what results in great albums and great music. Yeah, whatever. Let's just jam a while and put it to tape. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
I did like the shout out to Linda Ronstadt. I thought that was
Oh yeah,
Linda Ronstadt. I thought that it was just awesome to throw that in people's faces. It was actually based on Linda Ronstadt, and everyone goes, "Oh, you're here before." No, don't tell me that. I think it's kind of cool, actually. Of course, I think it's cool. Is there anything I don't agree with? Billy does. Silence. No answer to that.
Mellon Collie, even more so than the other Pumpkin albums, I think has always been my favorite of the albums in terms of packaging, so it was definitely interesting to read about it. I really liked that scrapbook look that all the pictures have, and I think that kind of really ties together the vision that Billy was going for, even though I think that was not something that he specifically asked for in any of his sketches. That was something that either Frank or the graphic designer came up with themselves, but I think that really, really made it go over the top.
I agree. I think Mellon Collie has the best artwork. Sorry.
Did you read, though, that Billy described the music from Mellon Collie as psychedelic music played by a heavy metal band from the 1920s? I mean, it's very evocative imagery, but that doesn't describe Mellon Collie at all. At least I don't think so.
There are so many heavy metal bands from the 20s. What does that even mean?
Jimmy would know.
Jimmy, yeah, that was probably, that was probably a riff that he and Jimmy came up with. It's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean, Billy. Gotta go like this.
I think, but with the Ringo sound. But like a heavy metal band from the 20s. Oh yeah, I got it.
And then he came up with the riff, the drums from Jelly Belly, just like that.
That's right. Like just one take, just off that description.
There we go.
Oh,
If you just told me that description and didn't say what album it was associated with, I think Mellon Collie would have been the last one that I picked. I think I may have even thought it was describing a door more than Mellon Collie.
Or Machina II.
Because see, heavy metal in the 20s, they didn't even have distortion, so they had to be heavy in some other way. And thus a door.
Oh, those Smashing Pumpkins.
I think we're a little rusty. I think the month layoff of the podcast,
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
We should try not to go another month before our next show.
Make sure Billy comes out with some more news. He's got to pick a new tambourine player or something.
See, the thing is, maybe people are actually enjoying it, and then we're saying, "Oh, it sucked," and now they'll all be like, "Yeah, it sucked. Man, you guys suck."
Yeah, I hope we're not actually making anyone's taste for them. I hope that, although judging on the reaction to our Machina II podcast, I don't think we're changing anyone's mind.
It seems like there's nothing more certain you can do to get slammed than to slam yourself, because nobody's going to disagree with you. Nobody's like, "No, it was really good." Oh, it sucked. I mean, unless it's your mother, But you're going like, "Yeah, man, you were right. That was horrible."
And as evidenced by our many discussions, none of our parents know what podcasts are. So,
no positive feedback forthcoming.
Well, thanks anyway for joining us this week. It has been an interesting podcast this time around. Hopefully we won't go so long before our next one so that we don't get so rusty again, but we'll see what we can do. Our song of the week this week doesn't really follow any sort of theme from the episode. I don't know if we could come up with a theme at all, but it's just a song that I really like. That's Translucent from Asheville, North Carolina on June 23rd, 2007. Good night, everybody.
Translucent, overdrive, us wishes blow away, and I whisper, which you can hear. Somehow I wonder, somehow you are near, and I hear my heart break every day. I hear you call. You call, and I whisper when you are near. Somehow I wonder, somehow it's crystal clear, and I hear my heart break every day. Yes, every day. Yes, every day. Yes, every day. Yes, every day.
The Hipsters United podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Smashing Pumpkins, Virgin Records, or Warner Brothers Reprise Records. All opinions offered by panelists or guests of the Hipsters United podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of the Smashing Pumpkins. All audio during the show is licensed for non-profit use per the terms and conditions on the Live Music Archive at archive.org. Intro music is from the Machina II album released for free download on the internet by the Smashing Pumpkins in September of 2000.